So for this particular lesson, we're gonna take the first clip on the 32 clip folder, that guy right here, and I'm gonna drag it inside our timeline. I wanna take that clip, select it, go into the inspector, and scale it to fill. You want to do that every time you have a different timeline and when you want to set in the best and fastest way your image, and then as said, we can tweak everything from transform, and we're gonna work with that on setting the right exposure. So going to color, I'm gonna work with a clip that starts as a raw file, and when we talk about the right exposure, it's the right exposure for the feel and the mood of your scene, of the story you're telling. And there is no right exposure. There is there is a way to make bad exposure, because obviously if you have an image all cranked up in the whites with nothing to say or everything burned out, it's obviously a not great exposure. But by the way, you want to set it at first after doing your white balance and just before your contrast and color correction, to set it in your best way. So when we're talking about exposure inside Blackmagic DaVinci Resolve, we talk about the offset. So offset basically is taking all the data from your image, the RGB and black data, and move them through the scopes. So as you can see, if we take the offset and we move it, we are actually offsetting all the metadata from your image inside the scopes. So this is the thing to do just before your correction of contrast, of color with your primary wheel, because you want to set it where your image should be. So you want maybe to dedicate a node just for that, because you may want to make a proper node for all your clips and set the equal offset on all your clips. And yeah, basically this is the first thing to move all your data in your image. For example, on this image, I want to have this sit on a medium part, on that log gray area, like this one. Let's see the before and the after. It's a better starting point for me. This is great to know and to use when you're applying a LUT. Let's make an example. I'm gonna deselect this layer and I'm gonna add another layer with Option S. Or if you want, you can just make a right click and add node, add serial node. All these nodes that we are creating are serial nodes, and we're gonna talk about other nodes later. I can go into LUTs, applying, I don't know, the superior or the code-like LUT. The superior looks cool. And I can say like, yeah, it's working great, but before it, and as you can see, it switched the way I was looking at layers, because the magic wand was activated. Without this activated, I have the whole view of all my scene, of all my layers. By reactivating that layer that stands before my LUT, and let's hear that, it stands before my LUT, I will apply correction before it. And it's really different to apply that after it. So because when we are applying correction to exposure before a LUT, we are saying to the LUT, you gotta work with an image with this kind of data. So maybe I want to tweak my offset on a specific way, and I want to let the LUT to work on that specific way. Let's see that. And as you can see, when I'm turning the gain down, there is like a gate there, and that gate is generated by the LUT. But I'm working before it, so I can do all this correction, and the LUT will work on the image that is just before it. So let me do that. I've done my correction with the LUT applied, and I can just copy them, but with Command C, deactivate my node, and then copy them on the node before. Look at the difference, it's like just minimal before. This is happening because when I'm working before a LUT or before another serial node, I'm just setting points where these LUTs will work. And so I have LUTs gates. The LUT is saying like you can't go further than this point, you can go further than those black points. And if I'm working, you know, after it, I can just, you know, go whatever I want after the LUT. But I want to make this correction before it and to have the control to, you know, manage my color and my exposure just before applying this LUT. But this is just an example. You just have to use it as a starting point, and you have to know that everything you're doing there will affect all the other nodes. So I normally set the exposure with the log image on the center area of my image. We can also tweak the exposure by working with the gain. The gain is like a level that is gonna crank the data on the input on the whole scene, but mainly on the grays and on the highlights. So as you can see, I can crank it up. It's extending my my scopes, but it's not actually moving them. If you want to set the exposure, you just have to do it with the offset mainly. You can tweak it on other ways, but the offset is, you know, the best way, and you just have to remember to do that before anything else, before your color correction and before your grade, obviously, because you just want to tweak it with the white balance just to make your image correct. And then when you have the cool starting point, you can add everything else. Or if you're adding a LUT, have we done, you can make tweaks and correction before it and see how them affect the LUT in that way, and not after it. So just remember that the offset is the main thing that you want to use. And yeah, you can also tweak the gain if you need more information, if you want to extend them just for that little part. Normally, if I have a really good image, I just tweak the offsets and I try to set it to the proper way where I want my image to sit. Maybe you want to have it on starting on a lower area or a higher area. That's all up to you. You just have to know that this is working as your main exposure for the image.